All right, let's jump right in. We're talking about AWS API Gateway, which AWS loves to call the front door for your apps. And look, if you've ever felt like you're just drowning in the mess of managing a bunch of different APIs, well, you're going to want to stick around for this.
Okay, so let's paint a picture. You're building a modern application, right? And it's not some big single block of code anymore. No, it's this whole world of microservices, dozens, maybe even hundreds of them. And each one, every single one, needs its own security, its own monitoring. You can see where this is going, right? It gets chaotic, and it gets chaotic fast.
And AWS has this perfect phrase for all that work: undifferentiated heavy lifting. I love that. It's basically all the stuff you have to do, the plumbing, the wiring, that doesn't actually make your app special. It's critical, for sure, but it's not the secret sauce. It's just heavy lifting that pulls you away from building the cool features that your users actually care about.
And that right there is the problem API Gateway was built to solve. It's designed to be this single, intelligent layer that sits in front of all your backend services. It just takes on all that heavy lifting for you. So suddenly, instead of 100 different doors to guard, you have one. It brings some serious, much-needed order to that chaos. Okay, so from chaos to control, how does this front door actually do its thing? Let's break down how it magically transforms that tangled web into something clean and controlled.
You know, this front door is doing a ton of work you don't even see. I mean, think about it. It's handling huge spikes in traffic. It's caching data to make things faster. It's the central hub for all your security. But honestly, the most critical part, the real game changer, is that it decouples your front end from your back end. What does that mean? It means you can change, update, or completely swap out a back-end service, and the app your user sees doesn't break. That is huge. Oh, and you only pay for what you actually use, which is always nice.
But it turns out not all front doors are the same. Once you're in, you hit your first big decision. You've got to choose between three very different kinds of doors.
So, the big question is, which of these three doors is the right one for you? You've got HTTP, REST, or WebSocket. And picking the right one is absolutely key, because it's going to impact your cost, your performance, pretty much everything.
And this is where it gets really interesting, because it's all about the trade-offs. You can almost see it as a spectrum, right? On one side, you've got HTTP APIs. They're lean, they're fast, they're cheap. Then on the other end, you have the full-featured REST APIs. These are the ones with all the bells and whistles. And then, kind of in their own world, you've got WebSocket APIs, which are built for totally different real-time stuff.
In this chart, it just screams the #1 reason to look at HTTP APIs first. The cost savings can be absolutely insane. We're talking up to 71% cheaper than a comparable REST API. That's not just a small difference. That's a massive number you just can't ignore.
So really, it all boils down to this. Are you building a modern serverless app and you need speed and a low bill? HTTP API is almost always going to be your best friend. But if you need the whole toolbox, if you're thinking about things like caching, monetizing your API with usage plans, then yeah, you're going to be looking at the more feature-packed REST API.
Okay, but this front door isn't just a friendly greeter directing traffic. Nope, it's also your head of security. The best way to think about it is like a really tough bouncer standing guard in front of all your services.
And this bouncer has a 3-step process to keep you safe. First up, it's checking IDs. That's your authentication, right? It can use Cognito, IAM, or even custom Lambda authorizers. Next, it does crowd control. It enforces throttling rules and usage plans so one noisy customer can't ruin the party for everyone else. And finally, it keeps the bad actors out. By plugging into AWS WAF, that's the Web Application Firewall, it can block common attacks before they ever get close to your code.
And just like any good bouncer, this one has its limits. And here's a big one you got to remember: the 10 megabyte payload size. Everything coming in or going out is capped at 10 megs. So if you're trying to move bigger files, well, you're going to have to find a different door.
All right, so we've talked about what this thing is and why you'd use it. Now let's get practical. How are people actually putting it all together in the real world? Well, there are a few classic patterns you see all the time. The most common one is what I call the dynamic duo. API Gateway hooked right up to AWS Lambda. That's your pure serverless backend. Of course, it's also the perfect microservices orchestrator, giving you that one clean entry point we talked about. For real-time stuff like chat apps or live dashboards, the WebSocket API is your go-to.
And get this, you can even use it to put a modern face on an old legacy system that's still running on-prem. It's a great way to modernize without a massive rewrite.
Look, I get it. It can feel like a lot of options. So if you take away just one thing, let it be this. Start simple. Seriously, for most new serverless apps, just start with the HTTP API. Unless you know for a fact that you need a specific feature like advanced caching or API keys, just go with the HTTP API. Why? It's cheaper, it's faster, and it's got all the core stuff you're going to need.
So there you have it. At the end of the day, AWS API Gateway is all about wrestling that microservices chaos into submission, bringing security, control, and some much-needed simplicity to the table. Which really just leaves one big question for you to think about. How is a front door strategy going to simplify your next project?